If you are enjoying this podcast and other podcasts on the Dragon Wagon Radio Network, be sure to check out the Dragon Wagon Shop. Awesome t-shirts and mugs from your favorite shows so you can tout your podcast pride all while supporting your favorite podcast network. And make sure to check it often for new items and limited time designs. Shop now at dragonwagonradio.com/shop and get your dragon swag on.
Let me get all the burps out of my system first.
Okay. What are you drinking over there anyway?
Stop sitting on this XLR cable. It's Coca-Cola.
Oh, how predictable.
Hashtag ad.
Man, I wish we had Coke as a sponsor.
Oh, man. I mean, they own everything else. Why don't they own us, too?
They don't own Disney. Wait, are they owned by the same people?
Probably.
Shit.
I mean, at this point.
Speaking of Disney, new Star Wars is out.
That's right. We were just kind of talking about it, and you were like, hold the brakes. Let's talk about this on the podcast.
This is important. People need to hear us talk about Star Wars, except I haven't seen it.
So are we going to discuss any spoilerish things beforehand?
About Star Wars? No, because I haven't seen it. I don't know how to spoil it.
Well, you said, I mean, some asshole on Twitter, like, spoiled it for you, but...
But not
sort of.
really. Like, the thing he told everybody on this Twitter thread was not something I really cared about anyway, which says a lot about my feelings toward this the newest trilogy.
The new ones, yeah.
He said something about the ultimate fate of Rey and Kylo, and I was like, meh. That doesn't really bother me that I know that. I don't even know what the plot of this movie is.
Right.
Just like I didn't know what the plot of The Last Jedi was going in.
Well, I think, and I hate to be somebody who jumps on the bandwagon of hating against the new movies. Because I really don't feel like there's anything particularly wrong with them, other than the fact that they exist in this universe that's so beloved violently by some people who grew up with it. And
I'm not one of those people. Like, I grew up with it, of course, but I'm not hating on the new trilogy either. It's just not for me. It's not my favorite stuff. Oh, well.
I mean, it is what it is, and I do believe you were talking about fatigue, Star Wars fatigue, which is interesting because I feel like
of it.
It's funny to me that that's the case because look how many Marvel movies there are per year.
Yeah, but I think that is after Avengers Endgame. Is that what it's called? After that one, I think people are not going to flock to theaters the way they did because it was all building up to this huge thing after 10 years.
Right.
And now that thing is over with whatever they called it, the first 4 phases, however they structured that.
I feel like it's going to be stronger than ever, to be
You
honest.
really think so?
Yeah.
I think basically the next ones that are coming out, they've got to set the stage for something bigger and better. They've already killed off half of the known universe and brought them back to life. What are they going to do? Like, what's the next thing? I heard it was maybe going to be Secret Wars, which is not quite as big a deal as the Infinity Gauntlet thing was.
I mean, they've got X-Men now. I mean, that's huge.
true. Yeah, I heard some news about that.
They've got a whole world to explore there.
Did you hear the casting news for Professor X and Magneto?
No.
They're going to go for African-American actors. Which will certainly piss somebody off, but I'm like, sure, let's do
All the
African
people that
American.
hated Last Jedi.
You're right. I mean, it was always a metaphor for like civil rights and racism and stuff like that in the comics anyway. That's when it came out. So I think let's just, make it literal.
Yeah. I mean, X-Men, for me, like, I never felt like Fox got it right. They always, I mean, to be fair, like, Fox did kind of kickstart.
The first 2 were pretty fucking good.
Let's pump the brakes on pretty fucking good because I think they were better than any comic book movie we had seen outside of Batman at the time.
How does Blade fit into that? Because that was before all that too. That was 90s.
Blade for me was more like an action adventure kind of oddly sci-fi fantasy movie.
Right. It did have
It
like
didn't
horror
really
elements
strike me
and
as a-
sci-fi stuff, action stuff,
It
but
didn't feel like a comic book movie.
Right, it
Matrix
didn't-
felt more like a comic book movie by comparison, even though it's not.
right.
Is that what you mean? Like, for me,
Like, yeah, but Blade was a comic book movie. Maybe you're right. It didn't feel like it because it was a little grittier, a little more, despite all the vampires and sci-fi weaponry, it was a little more reality-based. It wasn't like there's mutants running around and people who can run super fast.
Well, I mean, if the decades have shown us anything, it's that movies tend to reflect the general feeling of the populace. Mm-hmm. Like 80s, you had Reaganism and like all these super macho movies.
Yeah.
Which was a response to kind of like, having a president before that, everybody who loved Reagan absolutely hated Jimmy Carter.
Right.
It was like
the pendulum swung
the
opposite of Jimmy Carter, and we got Commando and Predator and Sylvester Stallone movies and shit like that.
And then you got we'll call him Mini Reagan and Bush Senior, and then that kind of led into, I guess, Mini Obama and Clinton.
Well, what were the movies from 2000 to 2008 that were like the new macho movies? Fast and Furious?
I wouldn't say that there really were any. I mean, Fast and Furious was
the post-Clinton years.
I don't think that Clinton pissed off enough.
It didn't affect the culture.
Republicans. I mean, he did. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, he did, yeah.
But it wasn't so violently, conflicted as it is right now.
Right.
Like now, it's like either you're full
wasn't
on Trump or
completely
you're full on
polarized.
socialist. Like there's
I'm
not
not a
in
full-on
the middle.
socialist.
I didn't call you a socialist. I'm saying that these are the extremes. Mm-hmm. Far left, far right, like come together. Maybe it's kind of like they kind of weave in and out over time, and but movies kind of reflect that. I don't know exactly where I'm going with all this.
I don't know either. We're talking about comic book movies.
Well, you're talking about comic book movies,
Look,
and I think
I want to say about comic book movies is that it's all been downhill since the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. That was like the peak comic book movie.
that was in the 80s.
That was in like 91, I want to say. Yeah. Early 90s.
Now I actually would really like to see a well done Fantastic Four.
Yeah, we really have yet to do that.
What was the last one? Was that Trank?
Yeah.
Josh Trank?
Yep. Disaster.
Josh tanked. Let me just see if I can figure out where I was going with that. It's that so fantasy films are so big right now because they're so escapist and have nothing to do with our reality in a way that we have almost like too much of it.
Some of the Marvel movies, it felt like they were still making some comments on our real world with the politics in the thing, like Captain America Civil War. It was about our heroes and the country sort of being divided the way things were headed.
Well, it's not that these things never integrate social politics. I mean, look at Star Wars. The latest Star Wars, like all three of them have a very like there's very much so like a social politics of today, like embedded in the story.
Not really.
But you know what I mean? It's like everything's tied back to this, or like go back to like Stepford Wives, and you've got this kind of break from 50s society of women in the kitchen and
where they turn that into a horror premise.
Horror premise, and then
where all the women are being forced to be Susie homemakers. That's like the worst thing that can happen to women.
Yeah.
In that movie.
And so you have movies that are more politically inspired at the base, which I think on the whole, you're saying, you've got exhaustion from Star Wars. I think on the whole, like, I feel like I have exhaustion from movies right now, just in general. Just because
I haven't been able to watch enough
because
lately
everything
to be
is
exhausted.
so politically based. it's nice to have escapism that doesn't remind you that the world sucks. I mean,
Does the new Star Wars achieve that at least? Is it fun and escapist? And
without saying any spoilers, I would say that it was.
If you tell me it's good or bad, that's a spoiler.
Am I at least allowed to say my opinion on the movie without spoiling it?
I mean,
If anybody doesn't want to hear my opinion because you're afraid it's going to spoil your opinion of the movie,
the movie's been out for 4 days now, as of recording.
just mute it for the next 30 seconds.
Right. I mean, I think we're
Anyway,
spoiler alert right now.
Yeah. I thought that it was both the best and the worst of the trilogy.
Of the last three.
Of the last three.
Okay, the best and the worst.
Best and the worst. And you can decipher that however you want. Because I felt like it was a great ending. However, because it was a part of a trilogy, and this was a lot of people's, worry going into it, was like, was it a rush job to finish it up a certain way? Mm-hmm. That's what made it the worst of the trilogy, because it took on the responsibility of trying to wrap up this entire thing.
Yeah, I was afraid the way the first two went, it didn't feel like one cohesive story in the way that the original trilogy did. And obviously the prequels, as bad as they might be, they are telling one story over 3 movies. Mm-hmm. And I know that the original 3, they weren't planned out. They didn't even know if Star Wars was going to be a hit or not, if it would ever have a sequel.
You mean the original, like New Hope?
New Hope, yeah.
I mean, he had like the whole concept, like, of what he wanted it to be.
But they didn't even really know that Darth Vader was Luke's father when they filmed the first one. We got Leia kissing Luke. Sure. These things are all sort of loose ends. They didn't have any idea where they were going, but they still managed to make it feel like it was like Return of the Jedi wrapped up a singular story about these core characters.
Right.
After the first 2 in the new trilogy, it sort of felt like it was a little unformed, going off into the ether without direction. And I knew at the end of The Last Jedi, it was going to be a real challenge for them to put a little bow on this stuff.
I think we talked about this before. At the end of Last Jedi, you go, I have no concept of what the next movie is going to be. And that's a bad thing.
It's sort of thrilling because...
Is it? I thought it was the opposite of thrilling.
I think if the audience can get ahead of the storyteller, that's generally a bad thing. If you can imagine where it's going to go.
Well, you should at least have an idea in your head of where it's going to go, even if you're wrong. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. Like, after seeing that and the first 2 movies, I was like, I have no...
It kind of feels like they're going off to just die.
At least... I mean, I guess, to be fair, at the end of Empire Strikes Back, it's just like, they're in a dire situation.
Right.
But it's not like the Emperor's gone.
Han has been captured.
You knew the Emperor was still there. Mm-hmm. You knew Han was out there. So you knew there was a piece...
It was an ongoing story.
You knew they had to do something about these things that had happened.
Right.
And yet, there was no way to really tie that together in the new trilogy. And so that the thing about the new movie was that it felt like this is a great ending if only it had been tied in the first 2 movies. And it's hinted at here and there, but I mean, who knows? I think JJ made a mistake by telling people, oh yeah, we just figured it out at a cafe, and we just talked about it.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, I remember reading some article. He went on a walk in France or somebody.
So the story for what the fuck is the title? Rise of the Skywalker.
Yeah.
They figured out the story on the back of a napkin.
Well, that I don't know. I'm saying Force Awakens.
Oh, that whole.
When they should have been planning out an entire trilogy.
Right. They wanted something simple that new audience members could get into without prior knowledge, but still left the door wide open that it could go a number of directions.
But if you've seen the trailers now for the new movie, you would know the Emperor's in the new movies.
Spoilers. I heard his laugh. I didn't know he was in the movie. Well, that could have been a hologram. I don't know.
I mean, asterisk. He may or may not be in the movie. His voice is in the movie.
Maybe it's just the Emperor's sperm in a tube, and it has an evil laugh.
Gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I am excited to see a singular vision take over the next trilogy.
Is there going to be a next one?
I feel like it needs to. Yeah, I don't know if it's in the same in the same Skywalker storyline.
I know Ryan Johnson
they
was
did
supposed to
kinda
have
set
his
it up.
own, but I haven't heard anything about that in a
They
long
said they were
time.
going to announce it in January or February. And I think
It
they've
has
been.
nothing to do with Skywalkers or Yodas or anything.
I have a feeling it's not going to be Ryan Johnson, which as much hatred as people have for him, I would love to see him craft a 3-movie story. However,
Well, we just saw Knives Out, so we know he's a good filmmaker.
well, I mean, you and I have been like some of his biggest fans for a while.
Yeah, Brick is a brilliant movie.
And Brothers Bloom, Looper's all right. I didn't love it, but it was fun.
I love a good time travel story.
Yeah, but I mean, I would love to see a Christopher Nolan or David Fincher or a
The guy who did The Lighthouse.
Denis Villeneuve.
Denis Villeneuve.
Do it, but he's already doing his own
He's
Star
doing
Wars
Dune.
with Dune.
Yeah.
And that's going to be awesome, I'm sure.
We'll see.
So.
I haven't seen the original Dune. I haven't read the books. I don't know nothing about nothing.
Yeah.
It always seemed it's one of those 5-inch thick novels at the bookstore that seems too daunting to actually read. I know there's some people who have, and they say it's like the best book ever written. It's better than Lord of the Rings. I don't know.
Did people say Lord of the Rings was great, like as a book?
Yeah,
I always heard it was long.
and it was long.
It was unique. It was unique and interesting, but I never heard it was like well written.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I thought it was very well regarded in the literary circles.
Well, today we're gonna watch a movie that's not very well regarded in any circles.
I haven't even read any reviews. I see on Amazon it's got 3 out of 5, which is not good because most things on Amazon at least have 3.5 out of 5.
We've talked about this for a while because I know you and I both loved this director's previous film, It Follows, which I did on the podcast with
Byron.
my friend Byron, which you were not present for.
Thanks for kicking me out.
You were gone. You had something
who
to do. I don't know what you're doing. Under the Silver Lake.
Finally, I have been
Finally.
talking about this for episodes and episodes.
And I needed a minute away from it, I think, to kind of think about it a bit more. And I know at the time I was like, I'm not sure if this movie's like sexist in a way. It may be. We'll find
Right up my alley.
We'll
Great.
Yeah, we'll talk about it afterwards.
And I'm seeing it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long. What the fuck have you done, Chad?
I mean, actually, that's shorter than I thought it was. I thought it was closer to 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Oh, good. So it's boring as well.
I thought it was 3 hours long. I don't think it was boring. I think that it is a movie that needed another pass on the script.
Okay. Feels like a first draft, second draft.
It feels like more than a first draft, but it feels like it's missing something. Something's missing.
Would you compare this to Southland Tales or The Box for Richard?
Southland Tales for sure. For sure.
Okay. Another SoCal-based
Just
sophomore
kind of
effort.
a zany, yeah. I don't know what it is about sophomore efforts being like these wild, like they're trying to fit everything into one box.
Well, I think sometimes it's writer-directors going like, I don't know if I'll get to do this again. I better throw it all in there.
Go on. I can't imagine anyone actually sitting down and saying, I'm never going to get to do anything again. Let's just fucking do it all. Woo. I mean, especially after
I can imagine that because I think that all the time.
how great It Follows was. And it's clear to me that this guy's got a vision, when I saw it at the Cinerama Dome, and he did a Q&A with Andrew Garfield.
Like in the dome.
In the Dome, which was a good place to see it. It was probably the first and last showing of the movie, I feel like. But it was interesting to hear him talk about the movie because it was funny to see him and Andrew Garfield sitting side by side, and the director David Robert Mitchell like really trying to describe why he chose certain things or did this and that. Or you can see Andrew Garfield almost like biting his teeth, like
Biting his teeth.
And then he would, yeah. And then he would come, Andrew Garfield would like, you know, to kind of lighten the mood, he would like snap a witty joke and like just say, yeah, man, I just wanted to sit in Silver Lake and get high. And that's why I did the movie. That's what he said. So
it's a 2 hour and 20-minute movie that feels like 2 hours and 45 minutes. The director can't adequately explain the film to an audience that has already seen it.
No, I think he did. He was like, you know, he was being coy. People were like, what's this mean? Does this have a meaning or is it just meaningless? And he was
just
like,
wanted to say,
I
like,
don't
figure
know.
it out.
He's like, I don't know.
Well,
Like,
I know,
wink, wink.
I know that there's perhaps a cult thing happening in the movie. There's secret messages that Andrew Garfield's trying to decipher. I saw like the first trailer for this movie, and I've been wanting to see it ever since, and I couldn't see it in theaters.
Well, I did feel like this was a lot like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Really?
And I don't know what specifically made me feel that way. It also reminded me a lot of what's the other movie we just saw with Nicolas Cage, Mandy. It reminded me of Mandy for some reason. Another sophomore effort, especially with like the cult, you know, and like how that's found and whatnot. And I mean, we don't want to go too deep in that because that's almost spoiler territory. But
And I know that you have written a film, or at least part of a story where somebody goes under a lake. Literally, there is a thing under a lake. Does that not literally to your story, but does under the Silver Lake mean what it sounds like? There's something underneath the actual lake, or just under the water?
Watch the movie and find out.
Oh, come on. All right. Well, this is why I wanted to see it. There's so many mysteries.
I know. All right, let's
do
do
it.
this.
Come on in. I saw you spying on me earlier.
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
See you tomorrow.
Good.
Who moves out in the middle of the night?
Nothing strange about it. She wanted to leave. How does that not make sense?
I don't understand why she didn't tell me.
Maybe she didn't like you. Maybe she knows you're poor and haven't paid your rent.
I found some kind of code or like secret message in her apartment.
It means stay quiet. Our world is filled with codes, subliminal messages, from Silver Lake to the Hollywood Hills.
Could any of this be connected to Sarah?
I know this girl.
There's a message in the music.
Really think you're gonna find a hidden message in a pop song? 1, 2, 3. Can't quite see it, but I'm close.
Honey, how are you?
Mom, I'm fine. Mostly fine. Why do we assume that all of this information is what we're told it is? Maybe there are people out there who are more important than us, more powerful, communicating things in the world that are meant for only them and not for us.
Yeah,
Oh, you think that's weird?
a little. Welcome to Purgatory.
Good to be here.
You're living in a carnival, hoping to win a prize. What are you going to win?
Under the Silver Lake.
And we're back. That was a strange trip we just took.
It's a very strange movie, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm still kind of, I don't want to use the word reeling. It's not like it hit me like a ton of bricks or something, but I'm still trying to like figure this out.
I don't know that it needs to be figured out, and I don't know that.
I think that's one of the themes of the movie is that there's all these things around us, but they're not for us.
Right.
The more we look, the crazier we're gonna get.
Right. I'm curious if your response is similar to mine. on the whole, positive or negative?
It's I would say it's interesting enough that it's just over the midpoint. It's positive for me.
Okay.
It's like 5.5 out of 10.
Now,
Because in the end, it doesn't really amount to much. And again, I think that is the point. You never even find out what that stupid parrot's saying. The most simple.
the first time I saw it, something about what the parrot was saying made sense, and I forgot what it was.
Cause, I was listening so closely every time that parrot
Yeah.
said that word or words, and I couldn't ever. It never
It's
even
almost like you
sounded
said
like
Oliphant.
Timothy Elephant. Yeah, I heard an elephant maybe, but what would that mean? Even if that's what it said.
It's I really really enjoyed the first 2/3 of the movie, and the last third I do not enjoy.
Where did the last third pick up when he goes to the final?
It's
little
kind of
hut?
like well, it's before that.
Okay.
It's more like when he goes to the house party, sees his ex-girlfriend, who's been on the billboard the whole time that we've seen, runs into the severance
Pay.
daughter, and then they go to the lake. He goes on a rant about homeless people for a second. They jump into the lake. She gets shot randomly by someone, and then from there it just kind of like gets a little too disjointed. You know, it's like it doesn't quite come together.
He just saw a woman murdered, and he doesn't go to the police or anything at that point. Like that's definitely a bridge too far.
I mean, that happens a few times in the movie. Like when he sees a fucking bird woman walking naked through his house.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he answers the door and it's just like talking to the cop and the landlord about
Instead of
getting
going like,
evicted.
"There's a crazy naked woman wearing an owl mask in my apartment
So-
somewhere."
Pretty much from that moment, after that scene, after the bird woman scene, is when I kind of. I enjoyed the hell out of that scene, but it doesn't really go anywhere. I mean, I know it's
No.
all about these tales of like
Urban legends of Silver Lake.
Exactly.
They never. They mentioned once the whale cult or the cult of the whale. I was so hoping for that to make an appearance because I don't know what that's all about.
Well,
I wonder if these are all real things that people have talked about, if they were invented entirely for the movie.
Well, from what I've read, this movie was kind of rushed and to be put together. Mm-hmm. And it was.
Do you know why?
What?
Why was it rushed? No, I'm asking.
Just to get a second film out as soon as possible after it follows. I think.
Oh, just
to the point of it being too ambitious, and I think by the time that it premiered, I don't know if it premiered at Cannes, but it played at Cannes, and I remember, I think A24 was pitching it as like a major release because the trailer for this came out like a year before the movie came out,
Yeah, I
and
do
it
remember
disappeared. It was like pulled because I think they realized they had a mess, and they were going to give him a shot to rewrite some things and add more to it to explain. And I don't know why that never happened. I think they kind of
They have to cut their
gave up on-
losses
I
at
think
some point.
if you look at like the amount of money they must have spent on music licensing for this movie.
I know there's one scene where a guy plays 25 different huge
Yeah.
pop songs.
I mean, granted, they're only paying for the half the license. They're not paying for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mastered, but there's a lot of massive songs in
And
there.
you've got experience in music licensing, don't
Yeah,
you?
so they would have paid. I mean, I'm sure they had some deal that brought the price down, but ultimately
those are
they
all
still
from one-
paid half of the licensing fee just to use.
Right.
I mean,
You know, that scene in particular was an odd one because if we're taking it at face value, he murders an old man with a guitar, Kurt Cobain's guitar,
yeah,
and then goes home and moves on with this little mystery.
Yeah.
And it's never mentioned again. There are no consequences for killing the guy who claims to have written basically every
Everything.
popular song in existence.
it's just another weird.
It's a
tale,
weird little
in a
vignette,
way that
yeah.
David Lynch makes things weird, but he has the ability to kind of not justify things, but at least make them appear.
They're part of the
Lost
whole.
Highway. I mean, Lost Highway. Bill Pullman kills somebody. you'd see it in the next scene because he'd be acting out on why he's freaking out about something, or vice versa.
Yeah, that just didn't. It's a movie that goes in 7 different directions, but not from one point. It's really hard not to follow the story or anything, but it's hard to see the purpose.
I mean, this is a cult movie in every sense of the word.
Yeah, and it almost feels like it's trying to be, and I don't like that. It's a try-hard cult movie.
Is that just because it's a Silver Lake movie?
Maybe that's it.
It feels like it was written in intelligentsia.
Yeah, every scene of the movie, every character in the background is the most Silver Lake thing you've ever seen. And I wondered, could anybody who has never lived in Los Angeles even get the Silver Lakiness of it all? If somebody in Iowa saw this and never been to California, they don't know what the neighborhood is like, that part of town. Would they just associate that with all of Los Angeles? Is it important that it's only Silver Lake?
I think it is, because it like you said, it takes all of the eccentricities of Silver Lake and it encapsulated them somehow into a movie.
There's a guy dressed like a pirate through half of the movie.
Pirate, they go to Hollywood Forever.
There's Egyptian
cemetery,
cults.
watch movies and concerts.
There's like a weird underground cave bar that might not exist in real life.
We're going to find out.
Yeah. They really, I love the locations. I recognize some of those streets, and they had a pizza box from Tomato Pie. Very well
good
known.
pizza.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Did
you like it more the second time?
I did, actually. I think it lost me earlier the first time I saw it, but less so this time. It still didn't. It probably made less sense this time than I did the first time I saw it, because I wasn't trying to piece things together this time, so I just kind of enjoyed it instead.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned in our prologue, we had just seen Knives Out.
Yeah.
A great mystery. And I feel like I figured that one out pretty early on. This movie, there's no hope of figuring this out.
No.
There's no clues. You have no idea where it's going to go. And it's really frustrating to be like, to be in his shoes and getting the Nintendo Power out and all this stuff and circling maps and decoding song lyrics, which was one of the funnier sequences, I think. He's holding up his paper with his feet and trying to count the letters and everything. I like all of that mystery solving, but then when you find out the solution, it's kind of like, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Hold on. What?
Right. Well, it's all kind of coincidental, like problem solving too.
He keeps running into the same people at these different parties.
Nintendo Power magazine.
This guy has no money. He's homeless by the end of the film. He's going to more parties and gets laid more than I ever did.
He's got a nice place though. I mean, this goes back to what we were talking about before, when I was like, I don't know if I really would feel like promoting this movie necessarily, because it is a male fantasy film.
For sure. And I wonder if it's obviously not autobiographical, but if we're making the director our main character.
Not to throw David Mitchell under a bus, but
well, I like in Lost Highway, there's a scene where Robert Loggia, he pulls a gun on somebody up on Mulholland Drive for speeding. And he's like, you know how much space you need to stop your car when you're going 50 miles per hour? You're going to kill somebody out here. Apparently that scene is one of David Lynch's personal pet peeves. He hates seeing people drive recklessly.
Oh, really?
So he put that in, like, that's a little piece of David Lynch, unfiltered.
Sure.
He's yelling at the audience,
I
slow
think
the
everybody,
fuck down.
I mean, any artist is putting that kind of stuff into their work.
That's just an example. This movie has probably 12 different things. There's a little homeless rant. Yeah. Who knows if...
I was like, that's a little off color for today's culture.
I feel like all those face masks probably belong to the director. That's not verified or anything. I'm just guessing.
I can't imagine that. Yeah. Well, I remember he was talking about... I'm probably totally misquoting him from the Q&A, but he was talking about having his porn stash and masturbating. And
Yeah, I have a feeling he's being real blunt with us. Like, this was his early 20s, him living in Silver Lake with no money. He just loves movies, and he was trying to, like, get his shit together.
100% he's got style. Like, he's got a style, and it's a very unique and interesting style. My question is,
I think
you said, it's the sophomore slump in a way, because is this a filmmaker who's getting trapped in by his own ideas? Like, kind of like
he's been sitting on these things for so long, he just needs to get it out there.
Well, not necessarily that, but just like a filmmaker who doesn't want to tell stories outside of the ones that he's come up with. Like, would he ever do something that someone else wrote? That kind of thing. Where, and then my guess is no, and not necessarily that he should, but it's gonna narrow his audience down if this is the kind of movie he wants to make.
Right. It's gonna narrow his budget down a little bit too.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, this movie must have cost a ton to make. I don't think it made anything.
No, I didn't even look at Box Office Mojo.
I think it was probably in the... I mean, I saw it at ArcLight when it played, and I think it was only there for like a week or two.
So you saw it at the Dome and ArcLight? Or wait, no, the Dome was at ArcLight.
It was at the Dome and ArcLight.
Yeah.
It was a Q&A. I don't remember if it was actually opening there or if they just had a screening of it. I don't actually remember, and I know it's a Amazon Prime movie, so anybody can watch it on Amazon Prime.
And you looked into getting a Blu-ray, but
the I guess the American Blu-ray is like a BDR disc.
Like, they basically make as many as people are asking for.
Yeah,
they're not doing a run of 10,000.
Exactly.
They're doing 500 at a time.
How many people buy it, and I guess the Japanese version of the Blu-ray, which is the more sought after one, actually just has cutscenes. It's like it's cutting, editing like some of the nudity out, and which, I mean, there's plenty in the movie. That's for sure.
And it's not really presented in any kind of really lascivious manner. It's just sort of like, is what he's doing now.
Well, it's
not a very sexy movie, is what I'm saying.
It's not. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know. It's just it's a fantasy film. It's
right.
Pure and simple. And I think, I mean, to be honest, like I'm all for people making their own fantasy films.
Oh, I just remembered another
doesn't
fantasy.
Mean you have to agree with it.
Another fantasy scene. He goes outside. He finds some kids keying every car on the block, and he kicks the shit out of them.
That was probably the scene that made me love the movie. To be honest.
Yeah, that's
just for that scene, watching him like.
I would have been fine if he murdered them on screen.
The kid's pissing on his door. And pissing on somebody's door, and he just
runs
walks
up and
straight up and just punches him in the face.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, the movie's just chock full of that kind of shit, and I have a feeling that he got this pretty great cast, like on the whole, because of the success of It Follows and how good that was. I mean, It Follows though showed restraint. As a filmmaker, it showed restraint. This does not show restraint to me.
He's trying to go for every little thing he imagined. Yeah,
this shows somebody who's been let out of the box and is just trying anything and everything. Because I don't. That was the best thing about It Follows. Is that it felt like it was very controlled, and this is what this world was. This does not feel like that at all. I mean, there is a weird world that's going on here, but there's nothing. Southland Tales. It's not being confined.
It is a weird world, and we're seeing it through his eyes.
Yeah.
There are, like, he's walking home with groceries on the trail, the dark trail, and he sees shadowy figures at both ends of the trail. We don't know what that's about. Never clarified. Is that the owl woman?
I think so.
Probably, but, don't even...
Is that the dog killer?
It could be the dog killer. Is he the dog killer?
They hinted at that, didn't they?
They really do. The homeless king is going like, why do you have dog biscuits?
Is it because he... I mean, obviously
in the
they show
first-
him picking up dog biscuits along the path when he's seeing a trail of dog biscuits that's been left out.
Yeah, and he feeds them to what's her name's Sarah's dog.
I didn't even pick up on that because that was so early in the movie.
Yeah. Another thing with when he discovers his vandalized car, the handle is covered with chewing gum.
Yeah.
And later, he finds a box in Sarah's abandoned apartment, and there's chewing gum inside. And we see the woman who takes the box chewing gum. So did she, like, was this all planted on his car? Does that have anything to do with anything? They have a deliberate close-up of the dried chewing gum still on his hand the next morning. What is he trying to bring our attention to? Is it just a red herring? It doesn't seem to have anything to do with the rest.
Yeah. I mean, this is why I feel like David Robert Mitchell is sitting back and he understands exactly what everything means.
And he's going, ha 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 ha, they'll never understand.
And
this is what makes it a cult thing. You can
Yeah.
pick apart these things endlessly.
I mean, it's Apocalypse California. It's my movie. I did the same damn thing, and it's like I feel proud that you could watch the movie and know that everything is explained inside of the movie, but you would never get it on the first view. It would probably take you 10 views to get it. Mm-hmm. It's probably the same damn thing where he knows exactly what is what. My guess is that A24, when they wanted to expand upon it or give him a chance to re-edit things, like they probably felt like they probably asked, like, hey, can you try to explain things a little bit better? Like,
You did make a comparison of this movie to Brick, Rian Johnson's Brick.
yeah.
And that's another one where it is a mystery. That one's much more hard-boiled and serious about things and much more intelligible.
Sure.
But that's another one where people are concerned with symbols and code names and trying to figure things out and piece this puzzle together. Then that works in more of like the Dashiell, Hammett, Sam Spade story kind of way. This is... We don't even know if this guy is totally crazy or what.
Probably,
He has this theory
is.
about Vanna White that like makes his lady friend a little weirded out.
Freak out. I mean, it's a strange one. In the sense that Brick and this have very similar scenes, like the party scenes, and the way the dialogue in the ADR is done is very, very similar. There's some terrible ADR in Brick. There's some terrible ADR in this, but there's party scenes where there's like people, speaking these like poems or something.
Yeah.
And you can hear them despite this weird party happening, and it's a world upon itself.
It's like a douchey Silver Lake party. Very artsy-fartsy stuff.
Yeah, you hear nothing but talks about movies and like
Oh, I love the
actors process. And,
the background line about like, oh, she's like her own director, actor, and sound mixer on her first network comedy. She's only 12 years old, but she's an old soul.
Right? And I feel like I hear that every single day at work. I don't know. I don't really know what to say about this besides it. I do think it is worth watching.
For sure. It's totally worth watching because I feel like, despite every reason not to believe this, I feel like there is some there. There might be something underneath what we just saw, something we haven't quite understood. There's a little thing I remember from the beginning. Sarah has her 3 dolls from How to Marry a Millionaire or whatever.
And it's got the code.
It's got code underneath their names, and I wonder if those symbols appear elsewhere in the movie, and that's like your key. That's how you decode the rest.
Well,
But that wasn't in the IMDb trivia.
This
that
was
mentioned.
exactly what was asked of him at the Q&A.
And he just said no comment?
Someone was like, do all these codes mean something? He's like, well, I don't know, maybe. Like with a
clearly
smirk,
they do,
with
yeah.
a smirk on his face. It's like, okay.
I have
all
a
right.
feeling if somebody went to the trouble, I bet somebody already has. I bet there's a blog all about this movie. If somebody goes to the trouble of decoding whatever symbols are in the movie, I believe it's going to be the equivalent of be sure to drink your Ovaltine. It's going to be nothing. It'll be like, thanks for playing. That's it. Bye.
Right.
That's really it. No kidding. You solved it.
I don't think you're wrong either. I think that I don't know this. That's why the whole last third of the movie disappoints me so much, because it's like it just kind of devolves into this.
Well, it
Now
seems
it's
like
a
he had
straight
to
cult film. Like
he had to wrap it up into something real, unless he did want to make his main character just crazy.
And not to say spoilers about Mandy. If you want to watch Mandy,
We have a whole episode about that.
you can mute us for another 30 seconds. But Mandy ends in almost the exact same way, in a canyon, in a cult like
There's
building.
a temple. Yeah, there's a thing.
Yeah, like the end of a canyon, right? I remember him
I guess
having
he's down in a it's
He had
sort
to
of a
kind of
valley
hike to a
thing.
canyon, and visually, I don't know, for some reason, it kind of plays the same in my head. And I remember a long, boring conversation happening in that.
This
too.
one, he's up on a mountain, not down in a canyon.
Either way, boring conversations happened. But they were the least interesting parts of both the movies for me. Like, I don't know what it is. It was just kind of like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Sure, rich guy wants to take beautiful women with him underground.
But apparently, it's more than one. It's like a whole subculture of Egyptian worship stuff. Afterlife.
That's the only thing. Yeah, it doesn't really. It'd be fascinating, if this kind of stuff, existed in reality. I know.
Here's the title, Under the Silver Lake. They go into the Silver Lake, the reservoir. They don't go under it, as far as you can tell, because the bunker that he calls to on the video phone at the end, that's apparently... Well, no. They're calling a different one. The one they're getting ready to go into is up by the Hollywood sign. It's up on that trail. So that's not Silver Lake. It's nowhere near the actual lake. I'm being too literal, perhaps. But
Maybe.
I just feel like that the
I have
title
a feeling
itself
that
is
they're all kind of in the similar area.
Yeah. Maybe it's just a reference to those little zines, the little comics that are about all these urban legends.
Right.
That's all.
So what do you think? What is the owl woman?
I don't know. I suspected it was, what's her name? The Riki Lindhome. I suspected it was her just playing a goof on him.
Oh, you thought it was
At first. I thought it was actually her.
She shows
because
up in costume all the time.
she gets the story about Owl Lady earlier in the film, and she says, like, I'll be back when you don't smell like skunk anymore, which is a funny running joke. He still smells the whole time, though. So I don't know. I thought it was her.
I thought maybe it was
Once
the
he
other
points
one.
the gun at her, she, Owl Lady freaks out and runs in the other room, but he never finds her. She just disappears.
She disappears from the story at that point.
Yeah.
When we see her, when we see the door of the cupboard or whatever she's hiding in, like, swing open with no sound whatsoever, and you see a foot crawl out. I was like,
that's creepy shit.
I was like, okay, you're reminded of the fact that you're watching a movie by the same guy who did
It Follows.
one of the best horror films in the last 10 years.
Yeah, and it has that sort of like ring or grudge feeling to it for a second.
I do, like, I keep going back to the style, and it's clear that he's got a style. And I mentioned, like, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as a somewhat similar kind of movie. Totally different concepts, but in terms of having fun in LA and presenting these worlds that are, I mean, they both have cult leaders. And
yeah, it's I think it's two different directors giving Hollywood a nostalgic look.
Yeah.
This one happens to be not the 60s, but Nintendo Power and playing
This
Nintendo
is
with
clearly
their friends.
our generation of filmmakers.
And there are several conversations about, like, our generation craves mystery because everything else has already been discovered. There's nothing left for us, so we have to make it. And that's what sends this guy down this rabbit hole, because he's just obsessed with figuring out the game.
Would you say his style's a lot like P.T. Anderson? At least in this movie?
No, I don't think so.
Like a Boogie Nights or...
I never saw Boogie Nights. That's one you can show me later, but
Magnolia.
it's not really an underrated movie.
No. I don't really remember it anyway. Anyway, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but there's definitely style. I am curious to see what he does next.
For sure. I'm still a fan.
And I kind of hope that he reels it in a little bit.
This movie didn't ruin anything for me.
But, hopefully there's no, I don't know, arrogance to keep him on this path of making strange movies.
I should have looked up earlier if he has anything in the works right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure he does. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Well.
Worth seeing anyway.
Yeah, worth seeing. It's
Keep
not
your bar, medium low.
It's a funny movie. Like, it has a lot of funny things. It is.
Just seeing.
If you're easily offended, you probably shouldn't watch it.
But just seeing his face as he figures out different parts of the mystery.
Yeah.
He's just like strumming his guitar, singing the song over and over again. He pauses, looks left, eyes wide, runs inside. Oh, he's
Andrew
a good
Garfield did a fantastic job at playing exactly the character that he is. Like, it's like you wouldn't want to hang out with the guy. He's just kind of a slime ball.
And he does it mostly without the usual movie talking to himself out loud to like take us through his thought process. He kind of just like is muttering stuff like a person would.
Right.
What a concept.
Well,
acting.
When he first looks into, he has this wonderful night with Sarah where they just kind of stay up and talk and flirt and kiss. And then the next day he goes to her apartment and peeks in the window and she's moved out.
Yeah,
and
completely
you can
gutted
it's hardly even audible, but you can just hear him say, "The fuck." And
yeah, it's
any other movie would be like, "What the fuck?"
an exercise in subtlety, approaching Billy Bob Thornton in The Man Who Wasn't There,
which I haven't seen in ages.
No, that's a great one. Keep going.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it was pretty. It was
for sure. I love the scene when they're swimming.
I think did Disaster Piece do the music for this too?
I don't
know. They did with It Follows. I think
it
I saw that
didn't sound anything like Disaster Piece.
I don't really remember any score from this movie. It's like almost all hit songs.
No, there was definitely score at the beginning when you were telling me to turn the volume up. All there was score.
Oh, well, I see. Mark has this thing where he listens to music at like, if the volume setting is 1 to 10, Mark's got it at 2.
It's not 2. I have this thing at negative 12 decibels.
I'm also deaf.
I think we're both deaf. Probably from turning the movie up too loud.
Probably.
God damn. Man.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's wrap it up.
Peace out.
We didn't even say the podcast name in this episode.
I think this is episode 75.
Who cares?
It's Dragon Wagon.
Mark, you know who I go to when I need to talk about my problems?
Dad?
No, Jake Lloyd.
Oh.
That's true because, in fact, Chad was on an episode of my podcast, Elaborate. It's a freeform conversational show where I sit down with people that I know and love, much like Chad, and I dive into their lives, find out what makes them tick, and just sort of figure out why. It's not therapy, but it's not therapy.
Can you tell me what makes Chad tick? Because I have no idea.
What makes Chad tick, honestly, I think it is being the military kid who moved around a ton and he sort of found solace in the nerd culture world of stuff like Magic the Gathering and film and television and comic books, which led him down the path of being a filmmaker, which he currently is. See, I learned shit about my friends that I didn't even know on the podcast. Everybody's got to check it out because it's a lot of fun.
Where can we find it, Jake?
You can find it at elaboratepod.com or on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever podcasts are found.